Good evening, everyone, and let me start by thanking WWF for getting us all together. It's a very informal setting, so no mics, so that makes it even more comfortable. So, what we are going to do is I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. The topic today is about plastics and planet. So, instead of getting into technicalities, we'll try and keep it as simple as possible. We have two very interesting and important panelists, people who are working on the ground with a lot of understanding about what the real issues on the ground are. So to begin with, actually it was a very detailed introduction, but I'd still like to ask you guys about what made you get into the waste sector. Maybe give a couple of minutes to just introduce to the audience about your journey as far as waste and sustainability is concerned.
So it's been now 20 plus years since I've been part of the whole system change for waste management. It was actually 2001 we set up the NGO SARAS because 2001 was when the first municipal solid waste rules. For the first time in India, we had municipal solid waste rules which were introduced. And the idea was that if you have rules, they should be enforced. And maybe as a civil organization, as a not-for-profit NGO, we can help government, work with the government to actually implement the rules. That was the thought process of SARAS in 2001. But then the NGO SARAS, as an NGO, there are limitations in actually putting processes and systems in place. And that's the reason why in 2013 we set up the social enterprise with a business model looking how to offer services so that people can actually manage waste rather than dump it or find a solution for it at the heart of both the organizations. And today both organizations are existing. I am part of SARAS Zero Waste, but the NGO SARAS has a whole big team and they are a separate entity altogether. But both organizations believe that reduce has to be the way forward, and we can do what we want to manage waste, recycle it, but reduce has to be the core of the change, and that is what I would like to kind of focus on today as well, because I think Goa needs that more than anything else. We are the number one consumer of plastic in the country as a state. Of course, that's because of the large tourist population, but irrespective, we still got that tag which we should somewhere share. So I hope that we'll be able to discuss that a little bit more.
Yeah. So for me, I guess it started off as a passion project. I grew up in the village of Suela, and so after graduating, I guess after graduating school, like many of us, I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was still trying out different things. But there was always a very strong calling to this idea or concept of nature-friendly and nature-friendly as a lifestyle. And so I got into film, but then somehow I always wanted to use that passion with this profession that I chose. So I wanted to get into wildlife documentaries, and then one thing led to the other, and then as mentioned, I was working in Kota for some time as a scuba diver, and I had a diving sickness, and I went back to Goa for what I thought was going to be a 3-week break, and then one thing led to the other, and now we're running this store for the past 4 years, not counting COVID. So life takes you in mysterious ways, and but now this is so what started off as a passion project now is something that we're doing full time, and of course with a lot of passion.
Cool. So talk more about what we actually do as we go forward. But what you said about reduction being the way forward. That's so. I actually had 2 or 3 questions in mind, but and the question that I'm going to ask you now was kept for the end. I'm going to ask it now because you triggered it. So in the last, I work in the space of waste as well, and we work in around 30 panchayats in Bichuri and Satari. And in the last decade or so, and you might agree with me, is that there has been this whole hype about recycling. Everybody seems to be gung ho about recycling, and so much so that some of the laws also revolve around the recycling. Whether it is the EPR, extended producer's responsibility, or now the deposit return scheme, it all revolves around recycling. But as we know, the hierarchy of these R's, the 3 R's are, there are probably about 15, 16 R's, but the main 3 R's that we speak about, reduce, reuse, recycle, and all the R's in between. The recycle comes at the end, right? But somehow it has taken precedence over everything. Right? We are forgetting that there's a hierarchy to it. So, is it the right thing to do? Now that you speak about reduction, and I think it's more a statement than a question. And I would like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we keep on thinking that okay, our lives are revolving around convenience. Yeah, but without asking ourselves how inconvenient will it be when we reach a point where, and we already see it, plastic in our oceans, microplastics in our bloodstreams, creating health issues. So how inconvenient is that? And is that really worth the convenience of this single-use plastic, which is got such a short shelf life? Packaging waste contributes 56% to the plastic waste that we have in the country. And actually, a lot of the single-use plastic, carry bags, etc., there's a ban now for the last 3 to 4 to 5 years. So, I really don't understand why, first of all, when you have a regulation, you have regulatory bodies in place in Goa and other places. Have that enforced, it's not so difficult. And all of us, of course, have to also push back on consumption, and that's the easiest thing. We control ourselves, and we can definitely, say no to a lot of things, extend our network, so it's not so difficult. And reduce has to be at the core of the whole change that we want to see. So even if Goa is saying that, look, we have 60 lakh tourists coming in versus a 1.5 million or a 15 lakh population, and that's the reason for us generating so much of plastic, it doesn't hold good. We are residents of Goa, and why should we, give this much of convenience to tourists who want to have these small little bottles of water all the time? When you can carry your own water bottle, you can carry your own containers to avoid the single-use food which is there. It's so simple. It's not so difficult. It's a lifestyle change for sure, but it's not something that is impossible. And I believe that all of us here in this room can easily make that start.
So I think we all forget that the best part is to refuse, right?
Yeah.
Refuse, yes. And all the other arms become redundant.
Yeah.
So, but even then, now this is, I think, probably people sitting here as well as the general public will agree with what you say. But then again, as we move forward, recycling seems to be the focus. Whether it's the government or the industry, recycling seems to be. So what are the drivers? What do you think are the drivers for this? What different can we do? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if the government maybe shifted its thing from recycling to refusing, then that would hinder sales of so many products, right? It would move into a non-consumeristic society, and I don't think that's on the agenda. So I think I think that responsibility lies with us to realize that just like what Wilma said, that refusing should be at the core, because once that plastic has been generated, I'm not so sure about these technical figures, but I think there's a very small percentage of plastic which actually can be recycled.
Yes.
So close to maybe 90% of the plastic already generated cannot be recycled, and a small percentage which can be recycled does not happen without further damaging the planet, because it has to go through a melting process. There's carbon footprint involved for it to transport it to certain plants, for it to be recycled and then brought back. So this word recycling sometimes it just feels like a band-aid on the whole situation, which is just like something made up so that it helps you feel less guilty when you do consume at the same rate at which we're consuming now.
So, just to bring attention to the fact that actually in Goa and other states, almost 60% of plastic is not recycled, it cannot be recycled, it just goes for co-processing. The flexible plastics actually go for energy recovery to a cement kiln. So therefore, even recycling is not possible for a large flexible packaging which contributes significantly to the total plastic consumption.
True. So I mean, recycling is where the money is, right? So that's why probably there's the focus on recycling. You made an interesting comment, I think Wilma also mentioned about the whole consumerism thing. Now, we all, got to accept that we are consumers and we are going to, remain consumers. And whatever is happening to our planet is obviously a result of our consumerist behavior. But then, how do you make those conscious decisions about what kind of consumer you want to be? Right? I think there's no denying that we are going to buy stuff. And now with all these online platforms where one click you can order whatever you want with all that heavy packaging, how do we, it's a behavior change thing, but how do we pass on that message? I know that knowledge is a very important part of it, but how do we try and convince people to be conscious consumers? How do we try and make that change? What do you think can be done?
I think Jonah's venture on zero phosphor is a good, no, Jonah?
Yeah, speak about it.
Okay, yeah, but first, so how to actually convince someone that I'm not really sure, but I can share a small trick which I use personally. And I like to give myself a plastic quota because to live a completely zero waste life, I don't think that's possible. We run a zero waste store ourselves. It's not like we have first of all everything in the store, and I still use sometimes like a petrol vehicle to get to the store. So you cannot really live a zero waste, like a zero waste life. But I like to inflict on myself a plastic quota. So like I know that if I have generated this much of waste, whether it's in terms of burning fuel or actually like buying something like in a single-use plastic, I like mentally keep track of it, and then I'll try to reduce it. Like that. It's very similar to having like budgets and targets for your business. It's like that. So it's like a plastic quota that I put on myself, and I think that's something that maybe.
How much is yours?
Oh, I think this is sorry. There's no exact figure to it, but like for example, if I do reach home and if I'm really tired and if I have ordered from out, like for example, I'll make sure that I don't do it again for the next 2 weeks, like that, right? So like I do like mentally keep it in mind that I created this much, and then I try to not do it for X amount. I don't actually have figures written down. But yeah, so like a zero waste store like ours would like essentially source things from as close by as possible, so that we reduce our carbon footprint, and then at the same time we're also empowering local communities, whether it's farmers or self-help groups or local bakers and things like that. And then we try to club orders so that deliveries get done in a very systematic way, so that again, reduction of carbon footprint. And then of course when it comes home, if there's no plastic packaging for sure. We do sometimes use single-use paper, but that again we're really trying towards cut down on. So that you have these little drawstring bags which you can return and stuff. So yeah, so like shopping from a zero waste store, or like taking your containers and going to the market and buying in your containers. Things which we can do.
What are your thoughts? How would you make consumers or the citizenry, the society, more conscious about what they buy?
Yeah, so I mean, when you see the waste on the streets, not just plastic, but all the other waste, that itself is an internal reflection and a choice then that you make, where you're saying to yourself, look, if I don't have my own cloth bag, I will not shop. It's as simple as that. And it's not going to be a big, it's not going to create any big problems, because then the next time I'm just going to remember that I have to carry it. So it's just a decision that you make based on responses of what is required. And I see more and more people doing that. And sometimes it helps when you're nudged to actually make those changes, bring attention to people. But finally, there are the regulations which also need to be enforced. So I'm saying all of us can make those changes, but our percentage and our numbers are still very small. So therefore, we really need to push our regulatory bodies to doing what they have to do. And I would say in Goa, we really need to push our pollution control board. And I can say that we expect the pollution control board to actually do regular finding, enforcement. There are various different ways in which they can do it, whether it is in markets, whether it is individual consumers, but they have the tools. And I think we as people can push our pollution control board also to enforce it. So how many of us can write letters, how many of us can go visit, all of us can do that. So it's not that we constantly believe that only government is not doing its job, we are also not doing it. And there are quite a few of us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think enforcement is something that's really lacking. I cannot comment about the rest of the country.
And industry, I feel that the collusion of industry and government for the whole business of profit, etc., or monies, etc., that is again up to us to also push, because industry also has to be responsible.
Absolutely. So when this whole single-use plastic ban came in, especially on the soft plastic carry bags, you suddenly saw all these non-woven bags coming in as cloth bags.
Correct.
And even today, you go to some shop, many of the shop owners, very proudly give you away those bags saying these are cloth bags. Okay, so one is of course the enforcement. I completely agree with you, but at the same time, I see a knowledge gap, which the markets seem to exploit.
Yes.
Even today, probably I don't know how many in the audience, but quite a few people don't know that those non-woven bags are not really
they're plastic.
Yes. So again, probably repeating the same question, but how do we, what can we do to affect that change, or rather pass on those messages about what's right and what's wrong when you actually step into a shop to buy, what to buy, what not to buy. How do we pass on that message more effectively? What do you think?
No, every organized, it's not an easy thing, but I think that if you're looking at awareness across everywhere, especially the middle class consumers, and it's the middle class that is actually the real large consumer, everybody knows about it. So how the question is in the behavior change. And if behaviors are not changing, then we need to nudge that forward. And one would be government enforcement. One is the regulations also in terms of EPR, so industry comes in place. And today you have all of us consuming because we've been influenced by advertising to a large extent. So today we want our own brands to start advertising how to be conscious consumers. Imagine if that could come to us in our mainstream media, that look, what is conscious consumerism? How do we bring that about? That would kind of bring us into a different way of thinking. So I'd really like to see marketing, advertising budgets go into changing our behaviors in a reverse fashion.
Actually, I can't remember the name, but there's a YouTube channel where some guy actually speaks about this. He openly takes brand names and says that this is right, this is wrong. Something of that sort.
Yes.
So, I was discussing with Wilma, just outside before we started this session, that when we started working in the waste sector in 2012-2013, where we could actually count the number of players in the waste sector on the tips of our fingers. And in the last 10 years or so, there have been a lot of new players coming into the state. Big organizations, NGOs and businesses like SARS, and quite a few people getting into the waste sector in Goa. In the last 10 years, there has also been change in the legislation. Most stringent laws, the single-use plastic ban, for example, and all the amendments in the municipal and the non-biodegradable garbage control act. So, a lot of acts have also come in. But then the flip side is that you go go on the beach today, and I actually would like to give an example. We as bird watchers discovered RSI, those tidal butterflies maybe 10-15 years back. And when we discovered it, it's a hotspot for birding, a lot of birds there. But when we discovered, it was nice and pristine. And in the last 4-5 years, you cannot take a picture of a bird without plastic or any waste in the frame. It's not there in the last 5 years. So when you go to the mangroves today, with the tides coming up and down, you get these plastics hanging on the mangroves. So there's more waste on the roads, on our beaches, in our wetlands, in our mangroves. So while on one side, you have more players coming and working on ground, you have stringent laws. On the other side, you are seeing more waste, in our natural species. So where are we going wrong? I don't have an answer. So I'm asking that to you.
So,
what do you think?
It's the same thing. I mean, we have regulations, we have industry that continues to tell us stories. There's an interesting book which Noah, from the one who's written *Sapien*, Noah Harari. So he's written a book which says that it's for children about how human beings control the world. And he says the reasons, two things. One is that we learn to cooperate with each other, and I think all of us know that we've opened markets, done all kinds of things, and we know how to cooperate. But we also tell stories, and we've heard the story from industry now for the last 40 years. Use as much of plastic because it can be recycled, and this is a totally wrong narrative. So how we are all the time accepting what the industry tells us without actually questioning. It has to change. I think it's changing, but it has to change. And this collusion, government, industry, believing that it is for our good and we can only grow our economies and we should grow our economy so that all of us can live comfortably is a very wrong line. But let's challenge that.
So one very stark difference and change I have been noticing, and I don't really know what to actually think about it. So, but which is we see companies like Swiggy, Zomato, for example, with wordings saying 100% green deliveries or something like that.
Story.
I'm not really, exactly right. But at the same time, it's a very large company. I'm sure they have responsibilities and stuff like that. So for them to actually print that on their bags, because it's not a carbon-free vehicle. He does have single-use plastic in his backpack. So where do those words come from? 100% green deliveries. And I think that again is it boils down to the same example of the woven bags, right? We suddenly shift to something and we're made to think that this is now fine, and maybe not too many people actually sit down to actually think about it. And I think that's a very dangerous part. If we actually continue consuming, thinking that this is fine, because then we don't realize how much more we're actually creating. So though we have so many new players coming in, as you mentioned, but there's also this to counteract to suddenly everyone is just put this one on the greenwashing.
Absolutely greenwashing. Absolutely greenwashing.
Yeah, I can't agree with you. So one thing, of course, you have been pointing out to the laws and the law industry and the government division. While I think everybody's debating on that, everybody agrees that that's a fact. It's in our face in many instances. But at the same time, we as consumers, we as individuals also, I don't think, like you said, we're not really playing our part. One is that at an individual level, we try to do things, try and reduce our impacts, try and reduce the stuff that we buy at home. But I think the examples of far and feet. How does movement take place where suddenly you decide that you're not going to buy, let's say online purchasing is going to stop, for example. I'm giving a very crude example. How do we trigger that? I think we need a moment now, right? We can't be saying that I'm doing this or you're doing this. These are just individuals doing stuff. How do we make this into a movement where people suddenly stop buying a certain thing? What can we do on those lines?
So it's not so easy, therefore it will have to be done both sides. Consumers on one side, but then you will have to have the enforcement come up on the other side, because these consumers are there's cooperation. Whilst we are good at cooperation on one level, but cooperation bringing us all together to reverse this whole consumer this whole consumer pattern and we don't have much time really, because if you look at the whole climate situation, etc., we are really running out of time now.
Are we talking less about it? I mean, in public, for example, putting it up like an advertisement. You spoke about plastics in our food chain. There are some references here and there. Are we speaking less about it? Are we not speaking about it more often?
I think we don't have media talking about it enough, for sure. And again, media is industry driven. So therefore, the industry is not allowing media to give us the right picture. So it's too complicated, but I'm sure, finally we are also a large number of people amongst the 8 billion on this planet who want things to change. Today, I think even the US consumer surveys that are being done, they want change to take place. So if the media can highlight all of this, mainstream media, not just social media is there, but mainstream media, all kinds of media, advertising, all of these tools are available to us.
Sure. Yeah. People are also maybe not talking about the full story, right? I mean, there's a lot of PSAs now on different channels, and I think they very frequently say, remember to carry your own bag. Carry your own bag has become a big thing. But maybe people don't really realize, or people are not talking about that if you do carry a bag and you do shop for things which come in single-use plastic, yeah, you manage to save the carry bag, but 90% of your shopping is still plastic. So maybe people are not talking about the whole story. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what the solution is. But I remember some years ago, something interesting happened, and I still can't get it out of my mind. When Cristiano Ronaldo, right after the match, right?
Coca-Cola.
He came and he took out Coca-Cola and he put the bottle. Coca-Cola stocks dropped drastically. Right? I mean, that's something you could try.
So there's just on the lighter side. So there was this conspiracy theory that said that maybe the rival brand going to be paid off. Cool. How are we doing on time? Yes, please. Go ahead.
I apologize, but I want to push back on something you said earlier. So this whole concept that you kept going to was about consumer accountability. Savings, supposed in terms of actually taking a purchase decisions, that's a corporate ploy that was created in the 70s and 80s to move the conversation away from regulation towards consumer accountability. Every educated population in the West is very aware of all the problems that happen, for example, right? And the media does talk about it quite a bit. The problem is that is on the regulatory side. That's where, and so when you want a public movement, it can't be just a purchase decision thing. Those things come and go because the public attention span is not going to be that much. And again, if you make the most cheap and convenient thing available to the public, a polluting, harmful thing, they're going to pick it. And you can't blame them for that, right? Especially in a country like India, where over 70% of our country would fall below global poverty lines, or India's global poverty lines. The real solution, I think, is that we need to shift the conversation towards regulation, make public movements towards focusing events, which is a concept in public policy, like with the Goa Heritage Foundation cases and things like that. So my real question is, how can we move away from consumer accountability towards focusing on A, court cases, and B, pushing governments towards taxing and actually enforcing regulations? The way to do that, I think, is court cases based on the Heritage Foundation things, but I'm wondering why aren't there that many court cases on the environmental side? We have a lot more of those in the West, unsuccessful ones, but generating a lot of public pressure, changing regulations. So why don't we have that here at all?
I'm not sure, but we do have very good regulations, and that's why we are constantly pushing for the enforcement of the regulations.
The citizens have the right to sue if they don't enforce the regulations. Why aren't we suing?
I have no answer for that. Maybe, I don't know. So maybe you would be able to answer that.
Well,
Not enough. Yeah.
Parag sir answer this question.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, so for example, if you ask me as an individual, why am I not showing video? So, I'll give you my side of the story. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Just that, everybody can't be an activist. Okay, so I consider myself to be an educator. So, I will try and speak about the law to the people and tell them about what the law is. But, somebody going to the court is something is a different ballgame altogether. I don't think we have too many people of that sort. That's something that I've had discussions with Lord as well. Where's the second line? So yeah, I kind of agree with you that I think people pushing the regulator authorities more. I think the classical example is the helmet rule, right? Because you're caught and you're fined. Sometimes even if you don't like it, people wear helmets, right? Again, a good example, but I think something of that. If enforcement is done, then much of our problems probably kind of fall in place. Yeah.
But even National Green Tribunal, I don't think has these kind of, there is, so last year some of the companies got heavily fined because they did not follow, there was violation on the EPR regulation. So companies like Coca-Cola got heavily fined. So there has been some kind of, legislation, violation of regulations which have happened but not adequate for sure.
But should every environmental non-profit currently be suing the federal government?
Like a Greenpeace.
Not everyone should. What are the state government? But we all have every environmental non-profit, including WWF, as members of the public, have the opportunity to sue. And the Go Heritage Foundation did. Go Foundation did in one. So it's.
I agree, and I think point taken is
Yeah. Maybe yes. Yes.
So I used to work for Reserve Bank. I just quit my job 35 years in Reserve Bank. And from that experience, we dealt with financial literacy. Okay, it became a movement at the grassroots level. And once we target that audience, there are, I think, a classic issue. There are two types. One is industry related, one is consumerism industry, which touches our heart. So I think the movement which we were talking about, if we target that audience, which is a very young mind, and that really makes a difference. Today, RBI comes out with Amitabh ads, okay? How you can be a aware customer or banker from bank point of view, from cyber security point of view. When Amitabh comes on the TV, he publishes it, all those and highlights the dangers of. So like that, if we have got data, how the small kids they teach their parents. So the movement part, which you can start from the school level itself, and it really makes a big difference in those young minds, and they go home and they teach their parents about it. And other part is of course industry related, which is on a bigger scale, which law can take care of, all the rules regulations can take care of. But the awareness part definitely schools at the primary level itself, there has to be something which we have to be aware of. Then it reaches generation wise, it reaches that level, the movement part. That is what I level. Because we dealt with it, I was on the ground educating kids about it, and the best results we got to also in the primary schools or the panchayat schools. So I feel that should be the target audience for making a movement to start them.
Yes, sir.
No doubt, plastic has to be waste. But so important, other ways. You see, for instance, he said, educating children, have courses in classes, courses relating to this. So the other thing is introduced in university curriculum, courses, university, UPNP, on how to reuse plastic and how to reuse plastic. The plastic can be reused in building of doors. Have you heard that?
Yes, yes.
There is no limit to human intelligence. Once they decide to do something, they will achieve it. It may be today it is difficult to use this plastic in a profitable way or something like that. But if you keep on pushing it through school, through colleges, through these academics, we get the result. That is it. Other thing is no doubt throwing of restricting throwing of plastic on the beaches. That is very much. But this way, putting that next to use in building of roads where we are using tar, additive to tar. We tried this 35 years back when I was working in Bombay. It was working in the Dobitala area. We made some of that chemical. Dobitala. Because it was that these were getting damaged in the road. So we put that Dobitala and it was very good. But you see, you have to be careful. They are a profit-making organization. In building road profit. They don't want road to last forever. Please, you excuse me. And we will get construction. So these are politics. That has to be managed.
Yes,
But, okay.
Actually, being from the field of education, I teach at the College of Science. And recently I've taken up my research also related to this topic, to sensitize them on how to introduce practical components into the environmental studies curriculum. So there are 2 or 3 other researchers in Goa, one from Mitsirani and one from the university, who are also working on this right now. And we just met with Sujit Jonah, actually yesterday was releasing a book today at ICG. So there's a lot of work being done already in schools, sensitizing children towards this through the infusion method right from class 1 and even before that. They are implementing it even at the early childhood education level now. But a lot of it depends on how the teacher puts it across and how much can go into the child's brain when there's 60 children in a class and everyone is not attentive at the same time. So there are a lot of problems being faced in the field of education also, but they've been pushing it for the past 20 years through WWF, through nature camps, through greening of the curriculum, through so many other ways. Like Pune University has done an entire analysis of the textbook, and through geography, history, English, science, they've tried to push a lot of the concepts related to this. But still, very often we find students at the college level, they will fail in a subject like environmental studies. How, I don't know. So we are trying to figure out where that has happened, what has gone wrong, and how we can continue to reinforce it. Because at the 12th standard it stops. Even the 12th standards today, they don't give much emphasis to environmental studies. It's just taken as a kachara paper. It's given step-motherly treatment at the college level. So we're trying to do something in that area. But of course, if you can think of some more ways to help out in this, maybe, because Goa has so many people doing things for the environment, but how it is not translating is very difficult for us to understand.
Yeah, so one thing that the analysts like to share something that we had initiated when the JWC, I think this was pre-COVID, when Rodrigues was the managing director of.
Yes, he started coming.
Yes, yeah. So what we had thought of, and many of us actually worked on it over that time, was to create a curriculum for the B.Ed teachers, because the issue that you raised,
Yes.
we also faced that because the teachers were not well equipped to teach the kids, so the curriculum for the kids was ready. So we had created an entire exercise to teach the B.Ed and the D.Ed teachers. But then somehow, when he got transferred, the entire thing then kind of faded away, unfortunately. That's another story. But yeah, that's something that can be revived, and much work has already been done. And I think it has to be done at the government level. So somebody has to take up the initiative to push that. So yeah, I agree. teaching teachers, I think, is also a very crucial part of education.
Has anyone here had any, try to get pollution control board to enforce the single-use plastic ban? Do we have? So what is stopping?
Okay, so
stopping the enforcement?
maybe not the politically right thing to say, yeah, but I think there's no harm in sharing. So we did this entire exercise in the information of documenting the entire flow of the single-use plastic within the state, including a proper document which speaks about who the retailers are, who the wholesalers are, who the stockists are, and where it's coming from. What we realize is much of it is coming from outside the state, manufactured outside the state. So one of the things that we had suggested was to write to the respective control boards of those states to take action. And here, instead of going to that Narial Pani wala and finding him, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It's the stockists and the wholesalers who are to be targeted. So the entire document was submitted, but for various reasons, wasn't really taken up.
I think we can write and ask what's
so the thought was this, Wilma, is that it's easy to go and, because we work a lot with the government, it's easy to go to the government and say that you're not doing this, you're not doing that. But they have their own, compulsions. Yeah, there are. I mean, let's accept. They have certain, issues in terms of enforcing. It could be political reasons, could be, other reasons. And then much of one of the biggest reasons is that lack of data in terms of doing something. And that was the gap that we tried to fill with this report, saying that now you're giving the data, now you act. But even then it did not do it.
More pollution control board also faces problems, I think, with enforcing because it's like bite and no teeth kind of thing, no? So
No,
they have a lot of things.
There is enough for
but
them.
apparently, many people are just putting things in their parts of to keep them busy with those type of administrative things such that they're not focusing on other things, what I was told. Because the ground which is coming up at Kampal, that stadium or something in front of our college, they had flouted all those rules of cement and covering it up and all that. And our cars used to be covered in cement every day. We were breathing it every day. When we put a complaint, it took them about 4 months to come to inspect the place. And then nobody could figure out whose work was it. They were manufacturing cement things, but nobody could figure out till they came to know afterwards that it was the sewage treatment thing at Tonka. Nothing, paperwork and all things were all out of place, and I don't know what. But it was such a long story. And this
I don't think we can comment on the functioning of the police.
This is the excuse I got.
Single-use plastic, did they also do the ban on the manufacturers, or was it just
It was at different levels, manufacturing, stocking,
It's
selling. And then I think now it's on the usage as well. See,
Somebody said that are we talking less? Yes, we are talking less. We have to communicate. We have to discuss. Your seminar is very important. It's on what we are holding now. Very important event. But nothing will happen suddenly. Somebody was saying that. No, it won't happen suddenly. It is gradual. Education, that action. It will happen.
We'll take a couple of more questions, sir.
It's not really a question. I just wanted to give an experience and a thought. So we were saying about movement, right? How things will stop, or for example, when you order, you said you don't order for 2 weeks. You put a self ban or something like that. So I had after Swiggy started delivering, and someday I thought, okay, let me try what this does. And Swiggy when I ordered something, it came in a plastic bag, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then I saw the app, it was there that I don't give a bag, I will take just the products in. So I did that the next time, it worked. And the third time, when I ordered, they started giving plastic bags. And then I realized that they are giving plastic bags. So I stopped ordering from Swiggy. So then there came Blinkit. And Blinkit, okay, they don't do plastic, they do paper bags, they do a lot of things. So this is one example. Similarly, many of us don't order from Amazon because they have a lot of packaging. But Amazon, the packaging of Amazon was discussed widely across the world, everywhere, and a lot in India also. And now they have changed that they are not completely plastic free, or they are not reduced, they are not, but they've reduced their plastic and packaging in general quite a lot. So if we are talking about movements like he said, awareness, and yes, let's talk about it. I'm talking to my neighbor, I'm sure Shraddha and Parag are doing 100,000 different things, but unless we talk about it and make it a big issue so that it becomes a movement, I don't think there is things that will happen. I mean, school and all that is, yes, grassroots, but nothing is more effective than making a big brouhaha about everything. And unless we do that, it's not going to work out. I mean, I go for morning walk and I see the same, all the places are littered, and so like I just feel the exact same thing what Parag was saying. Like in Agasai, we didn't see anything in the beginning, and now there is so much. In spite of having so much implementation in this, the panchayat is distributing these waste baskets being packed, so everything is happening. But why do we still have a thing on the street? Because I don't think there is enough being talked about. Not enough.
Great. So, observation and then a question to each one of you. Okay. The observation is that in the crisis that we're having in Goa, I think both of the elements that actually both of you individually highlighted, I think we're seeing happening to a high degree. One is you do have these great regulations in theory in Goa which are applicable, but there is a complete absence of enforcement, and there is impunity. And in the case of impunity, as we see in the rest of our society and culture, due to impunity, things break down very fast. Right? We are living in a state of almost complete lawlessness because there is impunity reaching from the top down. So we have an impunity on the legal side. But also what is really troubling me, and this brings us to Myanmar in a way, is that the average citizen has also now to a large extent thrown up their hands at the scale of the problem and walked away. Right? So Myanmar, which I've been working since I've been here for 20 years every day, is now in a state it's utterly lawless. Anyone does whatever they want, they do what they want. People are running businesses on the street, on the beach, off the beach. Government is present, not present. There's no enforcement. There's no plan whatsoever. So I have two questions. One is, we often say this is India and India is going to be that way, but what I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years of really focusing on this is that Goa is very bad compared to all the other states also. Right? So I'll give you the case of Tamil Nadu, which the state has spent some time in. And driving wherever you drive in Tamil Nadu is much richer and more successful than Goa in many different ways, much more industrial, much more, they have many more things. Almost complete absence of garbage on the streets. You have that giant beach stretching from Chennai all the way down. There's very little garbage there, either plastic waste or any other waste. If it can happen there, in a state which has all of the quote-unquote first world characteristics that Goa alleges to have, if it can happen there in that way, why is it not happening here? Okay, and zooming even closer to Myanmar, in Bombay, which is a chaotic city or whatever, they have been cleaning up Versova beach, right? The Chowpatty for almost a decade, and it's an example of a beach where the citizens came and took control outside the ambit of the state and have done it very well. In a place like Goa, with all of its advantages, with the populace that is so sensitized in advance, in a place like Myanmar, which is surrounded by so many people who fall into the most affluent categories in India, it is surrounded by literal millionaires. Why is it not happening here? I'd like to ask those two questions, please, to each one.
You're asking me, I have no answer. Because I really believe that it has to, we have everything in place and yet,
So why
we
is
see it.
So the Goans are the worst of all the people in it?
I think all of us have to take responsibility for that equally. How many of us have written a letter to the Pollution Control Board?
We should sue.
Wrong answer.
How many of us
Partly
have
Class action suit. We have the reservations.
I think Belgium is at least complete. People just don't come out and talk.
People don't, we screwed so badly. So maybe,
But there's one Change My City app where you can report the CCTV
really?
with the photos. And they come and immediately act also.
Is it?
Yes. So I think we should all download that and start using it.
But I can tell you that
Really tangible.
in Bombay, in Mumbai, in Bangalore, when I moved from Bangalore to Goa, the citizens really pushed our local bodies. Yeah, and I don't see that happening.
So we are
That's
the
why it
ones-
doesn't happen. It's not happening in Goa, and I'm saying that we pushed our local bodies in Bangalore to the point where they responded. So let's try
Yeah,
that.
so I mean, again, regarding why the citizenry is not, it's not completely true that the citizenry is not doing. In certain sections, yes, citizenry does come together to do things. But I mean, what's happening at the top, okay, is a reflection of what's at the ground. So I think it's probably because of that some Goa, it's I mean, there's, you can today, from here I can call up the MLA, the minister, or even the CM. I think that also it's probably convenient for many, but it's also an inherent problem, and I see it as a problem. That there's interference in any small stuff that's happening around. So I think that's one of the reasons why people don't galvanize together, except in something that's something. I mean, the Malay case is a completely different thing. It happened during the COVID time. That's another reason probably. The other thing about waste being seen all around, okay, and then certain places like Tamil Nadu or Mumbai, they cleaning it up. Okay. I have a different perspective to this. Is that many of these places where they are cleaned up on a daily basis end up in a landfill somewhere. Okay, so waste from here, this place might look clean, but that waste ends up somewhere else in the landfill. Okay. Goa doesn't have landfills.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's happening in places like Tamil Nadu. I think it's a more educated level process. They're not.
No, I'm not talking about Tamil Nadu, but in general. Let me take the case of Indore.
Bombay is already.
No, let's take the case of Indore, the best city in the country. Right, it's nice and clean. People doing a lot of stuff. I see is that they have a huge landfill.
Yeah, and also resource recovery
and that's
incineration.
Yes, exactly, and that that's not shown, right? When you
Yeah.
go there for a visit, that's not shown. Okay. So Goa has a zero landfill policy, which I think is a great thing. But then, of course, that's because there's no landfill, you see this like here and there. So there's a different angle to it as well. So I'm not defending.
I think
what's happening.
we get very poor marks. Basically, Goa can, even by Indian standards, we're not doing well. Right? We're not even in the top half. In dealing with these issues. This is good to acknowledge it. So you've not answered.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's corruption. I mean, if because like how many times have you actually tried calling the necessary body, right? I mean, like pollution is in so many forms, right? Like we have like 6 so-called restaurants next to our house, which we visit till 6 o'clock in the morning. We call the cops, they don't do anything about it, right? And then we have people dumping the fields, and you call the flying squad, I think, right? And then they come, they don't do anything about it. So you call 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. How long can you actually do that, right? I mean, if something actually happened when you did call, you would feel motivated to keep calling and doing more. But if there's always dead ends everywhere, and the whole system is just built to not let that happen, then how long can you actually keep doing that? So for me, the whole thing is just like
Harder.
Thank you.
What I am suggesting is last week effort. Why not burn the person?
burn the last one.
So instead of
Reduce toxic papers.
what people should all bomb. Finish, then start.
They release toxic
Then
papers.
start.
They release toxic papers that harm people's respiratory systems.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Severe
92.7 Big FM. So there are radio partners for drama dialogues, and there are a few questions from the general public. So we will address.
Hi. I just briefly introduce myself. I'm Arjun Day, Big FM, and we are radio partner for this dialogues. And we carry this information on air, and we carry the interviews also, like yesterday with Wilma ma'am, Jonah. And we ask public people to send us questions on their topic. So I got a few questions here. So you can briefly answer them. If these are repetitions, then you can just skip them. I keep it late. Okay, first question is from Tanvi Naik, and she asked, by banning the use of plastic, aren't we stopping the future archaeologists from discovering artifacts of our time? So we get some different perspective on this. So
I hope you won't start. That's if you consider plastic as an artifact.
I think we already have enough of plastic buried, so I don't think
we do.
that's not going to become a.
They can rely on those.
Yeah. Enough of hundreds of millions of tons buried.
Right. So next question from Aditya Boyavani asks, why do we focus so much on straws and bags but ignore industrial plastic waste?
Because the first is single use, and it's also it's easy to actually say to have that out of the system. Industrial plastic is more a long use kind of plastic, and it also has its requirements. So that's why the reason why we're focusing on the single use, which can be easily out of the system.
Alright. So the next question is from Pooja Sawant, and she says, can biodegradable plastics actually solve the problem, or are they just the marketing gimmick?
Doesn't sound very good.
So I'm not sure whether there's anything called biodegradable.
Yeah, there's no such thing. It's pseudo plastic. Yeah, it's happening.
Alright, so next question from Aryan Kama, that is asked, is eliminating all plastics realistic, or are we chasing an impractical idea?
I don't think anybody is thinking about eliminating plastic at all. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't think any of us here say that plastic should be eliminated from our life. So yeah, that's not the motivation at all. What we're saying is that we need to get so if you have to actually make a distinction, the good plastics have to be there, the bad plastics have to go.
Especially in the health sector.
Not necessarily, but yes.
Single use. Yeah.
Single use. Next is from Priyankar, and Prashna Saki. If we reuse plastic, we already have. Do you think we can avoid making new plastic? Recycle all the plastic available. Right?
Oh, we can
Recycle all the plastic.
You see, we have to reduce
Reuse.
we have to reduce materials. That's where the whole conversation now is about degrowth, reducing use of materials. So all of that belongs to that.
Right. So this is the last question from Shruti 9. And could banning plastic unintentionally cause more deforestation or other environmental problems?
No.
But I just want to bring attention that paper is not a substitute for plastic. We have to look at materials, so reuse is.
Alright, so that's all we said. And I think we should take all the questions, because sometimes it's very silly questions, but I think it's necessary to take all these questions. So thank you so much, sir, for being here.
Thanks.